The Titanic sinking remains one of the most captivating stories ever told. While countless movies, documentaries, and miniseries have recounted the tragedy, whispers of something beyond the iceberg collision persist. Did the unsinkable ship truly meet its end by striking ice, or was a darker force at play? Survivors' accounts hinting at more sinister causes fuel the mystery. This video takes a look at these claims, questioning whether the iceberg was truly the Titanic's doom and exploring the chilling possibility of a cursed Egyptian mummy on board. The Titanic was switched. The year was 1912. The world held its breath as the mighty Titanic sank beneath the icy waves of the North Atlantic. This wasn't supposed to happen. This ship was dubbed unsinkable, yet it lay broken and cold in the depths. But in recent years, a whisper has emerged from the shadows of the internet, a story so unbelievable it tickles the edges of our fascination. What if it wasn't the Titanic that sank? What if it was another ship, a clever imposter that met its watery end? It's a juicy tidbit, isn't it? Insurance scams and ship swaps, it all sounds like something out of a movie, and that is part of the draw. We humans love a good mystery, especially when it involves the rich and powerful. So it's no surprise that this theory claiming the Titanic was actually the Olympic, another White Star Line ship, has gained some traction. See, back in 1911, the Olympic met with trouble during a voyage from England to New York. It collided with a warship which damaged its hull. It sailed back to Belfast, its home port, for repairs. After getting patched up, the Olympic continued its journey, but it wasn't all smooth, safe sailing. It needed further repairs in March 1912, just weeks before the Titanic was due to make its maiden voyage. Some reckon that the people in charge, maybe the shipping company or some shadowy figures, decided the Olympic was too badly damaged to make money anymore. So they hatched a crazy plan: switch it with the brand new Titanic. They imagined they could sink the damaged ship and collect a big fat insurance payout. Who cares if people died, right? However, there are a few major cracks in this theory. Experts like Kent Layton, who wrote a whole book about seafaring conspiracies, point out that the Titanic's insurance wouldn't even cover the cost of replacing the Olympic, let alone make them rich. So even if they swapped the ships, it wouldn't have been a profitable scheme. Gareth Russell, a British historian who has studied the Titanic for years, doesn't mince words when it comes to this theory. He thinks it's so far-fetched, so utterly implausible that it's almost funny. Why? Well, for starters, the Titanic and the Olympic weren't just sisters, they were practically twins. They looked similar, sure, but inside they were different. Different layouts, different decorations, and even different engines. Swapping them in a secret week-long operation would be like trying to sneak a giraffe into a zebra costume. It wouldn't work, not even close. People on board, from the captain to the crew, would have noticed something fishy right away. Russell points out that if the owners really wanted to collect insurance, they could have just accidentally damaged the ship while it was docked. Maybe a small fire, something contained and believable. That way they get the money without putting anyone in danger or risking a giant iceberg in the middle of the ocean. Much less messy, much less morally reprehensible. So while the idea of a sneaky ship swap might sound like something out of a spy movie, the reality is far less glamorous. The evidence just doesn't add up.
One of the many lives lost on the Titanic belonged to William Stead, a famous British editor with a head full of fascinating and sometimes strange ideas. Unlike most, Stead wasn't just concerned with earthly matters. He was a big believer in strange things, in spirits and messages from beyond the grave. In fact, a few years before the Titanic sank, he had been convinced that a grumpy, cursed mummy lurking in the British Museum was responsible for a string of bad luck plaguing London. Fires, accidents, and even the weather seemed to bend to the ancient artifact's will. According to Stead, this wasn't just his quirky personal belief. Back then, many folks, especially those in powerful positions, had a tendency to blame misfortune on the people whose lands they had conquered. Mysterious happenings in places like Egypt or Native American burial grounds were often chalked up to angry spirits seeking revenge. It was an easy way to explain the unexplainable and a convenient way to dismiss the voices and concerns of those whose cultures and lands had been disrupted. Now, as the Titanic sailed towards its fateful encounter with the iceberg, William Stead, the enthusiastic editor with a penchant for the paranormal, couldn't resist regaling fellow passengers with his latest theory, the curse of the vengeful mummy. His captivating tales of the ancient artifact's wrath, supposedly responsible for London's recent misfortunes, were a welcome distraction from the monotony of the long voyage. Little did anyone know that these chilling stories would take on a new, tragic dimension after the unthinkable happened. When the Titanic met its icy demise, one survivor managed to reach New York and recount Stead's chilling tales to the press. The media, hungry for any angle on the disaster, devoured the story. Newspapers across the country splashed sensational headlines across their front pages, weaving a spooky narrative about the mummy's revenge. The narrative spoke of an ancient Egyptian princess preserved as a mummy who brought misfortune wherever she went after being dug up from her tomb. The mummy was said to have caused a string of deaths and disasters across the country. Frightened by the curse, British art collectors and museum workers desperately wanted to get rid of the mummy. An adventurous American archaeologist saw the whole thing as a thrilling opportunity. Ignoring his colleagues' warnings about the mummy's wrath, he bought the artifact and set sail for New York, eager to study his prize. But fate had other plans. The archaeologist, along with his cursed cargo, boarded none other than the RMS Titanic. The spooky story of the cursed mummy sailing off on the Titanic might make for a chilling campfire tale, but in reality, it's all wet. Turns out the unlucky mummy everyone blames is still safely tucked away in the British Museum, where it's been for a century. No ancient mummy hitched a ride on the doomed ship, despite what some folks might say. That hasn't stopped some people from blaming the mummy for the ship's tragic end. The legend seems to have a life of its own, even without any evidence to back it up. It seems some folks prefer a good ghost story over the cold, hard facts.
The Titanic sinking still ranks as one of history's worst maritime disasters. This colossal tragedy happened just 2 years before the First World War erupted, causing some to whisper a darker possibility. Did a German U-boat, a type of stealthy underwater warship, actually send the unsinkable ship to its doom? If this theory were true, it would change the story of the Titanic dramatically. It wouldn't just be a tragic accident, but a deliberate act of violence, an omen of the brutal warfare to come. After all, in 1915, just 3 years later, a German U-boat would torpedo the Lusitania, another British ocean liner, killing over 1,000 people. The similarity sparked suspicion. The Titanic's icy tomb lay undisturbed for decades until a team of explorers finally located it in 1985, nestled deep in the Atlantic. The ship's right side, or starboard, was firmly lodged in the seabed. This was the same side that had met its fatal match with an iceberg off Newfoundland 72 years earlier, on April 14, 1912. Using a special technology called sub-profiles, peered into the sunken vessel's hull. Their digital images revealed a chilling detail. 6 rivets, like tiny metal buttons, had popped out of place. This sparked speculation that shoddy construction might have played a role in the disaster. However, there was a catch. These 6 missing rivets only covered a small patch on the hull, about 12 square feet in total. That's barely a pinprick on a massive ship like the Titanic. While it certainly raised questions about the ship's quality, it seemed unlikely that such a tiny area could be solely responsible for the Titanic's rapid sinking. Adding fuel to the conspiracy fire were the accounts of several survivors who claimed the iceberg did not destroy the ship. Both passengers and crew members who testified before the United States Senate Inquiry Panel swore they hadn't felt any major impact or heard a loud crash when the Titanic hit the iceberg. To them, it seemingly just grazed the side. But here's the twist.
They all described hearing 4 distinct reports, almost like muffled explosions coming from deep within the ship after it brushed against the ice. The natural explanation was boiler malfunctions or internal pressure issues, but some couldn't help but wonder, could these have been torpedoes instead? The idea of a sneaky German submarine lurking in the North Atlantic, silently firing on the supposedly unsinkable liner, was certainly chilling. Adding to the confusion, survivors huddled in lifeboats reported seeing a searchlight in the distance, giving them hope for rescue. They believed it came from the Californian, another ship nearby. But this hope was dashed when Captain Stanley Lord of the Californian firmly denied their claims. He insisted the light wasn't his and that another vessel stood between him and the Titanic. This claim was backed up by some of his crew. They swore they saw an unidentified ship 5 to 6 miles away, even up until around 2 a.m. Some speculated that it could have been a submarine surfacing after maybe causing the disaster and then vanishing into the night. It's important to note that this wasn't the Carpathia, the real rescue ship that arrived later. The identity of the unknown ship remains a matter of intense debate. Some, particularly in the wake of World War I, suspected it could have been a German U-boat. German submarine technology was indeed advanced in this period, and U-boats were known to operate in the North Atlantic. However, there's no concrete evidence to support this claim. The possibility of a deliberate attack or accidental collision with the Titanic remains purely speculative.